Hi. I'm Mark. I'm 36, and I used to think I married the smartest woman I'd ever met. Rachel was calm, organized, beautiful in that quiet librarian way. We both worked in tech, raised a 5-year-old boy together, and lived in a house her parents partially helped us buy. Life was manageable, predictable, safe. Until I passed out in the kitchen last month. The ER doctor said I had traces of something strange in my system, not alcohol, not narcotics, but a mix of sedatives and herbal compounds usually found in ancient medicine rituals. That would have been shocking on its own, if Rachel hadn't been casually making me sleep teas for the last 6 months. At first, I thought it was her mother. She's into all that holistic stuff. But when I confronted Rachel, she didn't flinch. She just said, "It's to help you rest. You've been too stressed lately." Then I found the envelope. It was hidden in the back of our filing cabinet, behind expired insurance papers and an old passport. Inside was a printed, spiritual protection contract, with both our names, and mine signed in red ink. Only I never signed it. The worst part? There was a photo clipped to the contract. Not of us. It was her, Rachel, in our bedroom. With someone else. Our son was in the background. Sleeping. I couldn't breathe. I started tracing every out-of-town work trip she'd taken that year. Every one of them lined up with the same weekends her spiritual mentor had apparently visited our house to bless the property. The guy from the photo. I confronted her again. She said I was paranoid. That I was mixing stress with superstition. That maybe I should get some air and calm down. But when I left the house that night and checked our home security cam backups from the cloud, she had deleted all the weekends he was here. Except one. I watched it. Frame by frame. She didn't just lie. She didn't just cheat. She planned all of it. The drinks. The herbs. The ritual. The erasure of my choices. And now I'm trying to figure out how to protect my son from a woman who, somewhere along the way, stopped being a partner, and became a stranger with a secret life. And the scariest part? I don't think she ever planned to stop. I didn't sleep the night I saw the footage. The screen burned into my eyes, Rachel's silhouette in our bedroom, soft candlelight flickering across the walls, and that man's hands brushing over her shoulders. She looked up at him like he was something divine. Like I had never existed. My son, curled asleep on the bed behind them, was the only piece of reality anchoring me. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen. The herbal tea she'd left for me was still warm. I poured it down the drain. The next morning, I told her I was taking our son to visit my brother out of town. She didn't argue. Just smiled and kissed my cheek like she always did, as if everything was normal. It wasn't. I spent 2 days at my brother's place. 2 days replaying every moment, the sleepiness, the confusion, the lack of desire that had crept into my body like fog. I thought it was stress. Overwork. Parenthood. But now I wondered if something deeper had been done to me, something I'd allowed by trusting her. It wasn't just the affair. It was the erosion of my mind. On the third night, I opened the drawer next to my bed, the one I hadn't touched in months, and found a folded note tucked behind a pair of socks. It wasn't mine. The handwriting was hers. A spell of some kind. A list of ingredients. And beneath it, a symbol I didn't recognize, drawn in thick red ink. It looked almost like a twisted heart. Or a knot. At the bottom, my name, again, in red. I started digging. Old emails. Deleted messages. Texts that had been wiped from our shared calendar. And that's when I noticed something chilling. She had never deleted a message from him. They were archived. And buried inside a hidden folder were exchanges that made my chest tighten. He called her priestess. She called him teacher. They weren't having an affair. They were conducting a ritual. One message stood out. When he's weakened enough, bind the energy. Once the contract is complete, you'll be free. Free from what? That night, after my son fell asleep in his sleeping bag, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever really known my wife. If the woman who used to leave notes in my lunchbox and fall asleep against my shoulder had simply turned into someone else. Or if she'd always been this. I remembered the way she'd touched me last, not out of love, but like checking for symptoms. Her hands tracing my chest like she was looking for something under the skin. Her kiss not hungry, not sweet, just efficient. Like a seal. I didn't want to believe it, but somewhere deep in my gut, I knew. Whatever intimacy we had left had been replaced with something calculated. Something that served a higher purpose, and it wasn't love. The next morning, I drove back home early. She wasn't expecting us. And when I stepped into the kitchen, I found her with him. Not in bed. Not undressed. But close. Too close. He was leaning over her, whispering something while she stirred a pot of that familiar-smelling tea. Her hand was trembling. Not with fear. With excitement. Like a spell was being finished. She didn't see me at first. But when she turned and froze, I saw it in her eyes. Not guilt. Fear. Because whatever they were doing, it wasn't done yet. And I had returned too soon. I didn't go home that night. I walked the streets for hours until my legs ached and my thoughts blurred. My phone buzzed with missed calls and texts from Rachel. Where are you? I'm worried. Please come home. But I couldn't face her. Not yet. Not when my world felt so off-kilter. I checked into a motel on the outskirts of town and sat in the silence, staring at the stained ceiling tiles as my mind spun. The next morning, I took a slow drive to the old bookstore downtown. It was a quiet place I used to go to when I needed clarity. The owner, a sharp-eyed older woman named Margot, remembered me. Rough night, she asked, handing me a cup of bitter coffee. I nodded. You could say that. We sat in silence for a while before I finally spoke. Have you ever found out something about someone you loved that changed everything? Margot didn't answer right away. She just looked at me like she already knew what I was going to say. Sometimes, she said, people carry pieces of themselves they never intended to share. And sometimes, they get careless. That's when I pulled out the photo. The one of Jessica and the man in the white dress shirt, their bodies tangled together on a couch that wasn't ours. Margot stared at it for a long time. You recognize him? I asked. She took a deep breath. He came in here once. Months ago. Bought 3 books on lucid dreaming and 1 on memory manipulation. Talked a lot about control. That made something in my chest tighten. Control. That was the word Jessica always used when she talked about how I made her feel safe. I thanked Margot and left, my hands trembling. I didn't know what scared me more, the idea that Jessica had an affair, or that she'd done it with someone who studied how to manipulate minds. Back in my car, I opened the glove compartment and pulled out the small velvet pouch I'd found weeks ago, hidden under her side of the bed. Inside was a piece of parchment, folded tight, with symbols I couldn't understand. And a strand of my hair. I hadn't told anyone about it. Now I was starting to wonder if this was more than just betrayal. Maybe it was something darker. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed in the motel, sheets scratchy, the hum of the AC masking the silence. I kept seeing Jessica's face, the way she smiled when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her fingers lingered too long on her phone lately. The way she smelled faintly of cologne I didn't wear. The next morning, I drove back home. Jessica was in the kitchen, making pancakes like nothing happened. She turned to me, startled, and wrapped her arms around my neck. God, I was so worried. I didn't hug her back. Instead, I whispered, "Who is he?" She pulled away. What are you talking about? I placed the photo on the counter. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just looked at it, then at me. Her silence said everything. But what she said next chilled me to the bone. You don't understand. It's not what you think. I had to do it. I backed away. Had to. Her eyes filled with tears. There are things I can't tell you. Things you'd never believe. She reached for me. I turned away. Because in that moment, I realized I didn't know the woman I married. Not even a little. I stayed out late again that night, parked in the shadows of a vacant lot near the lake where Rachel and I used to walk before dinner. The breeze was sharp and the air tasted metallic, like a storm was hiding in the distance. I needed space, but more than that, I needed clarity. Something was deeply wrong, and I didn't believe it was just an affair anymore. It felt layered, like I'd walked into a story mid-chapter and couldn't find the beginning. I started combing through every photo, receipt, and text I could find. I went through old journals, scanned her emails, even found her old burner phone, hidden inside the lining of a purse she hadn't used in over a year. It was there I found the first real crack in the story. A message from a contact named Swan. No real name. No location. Just vague messages, he won't suspect. Phase 2 is ready. And the last one, dated the night before I found the photo, make sure he drinks it. That line nearly made me drop the phone. It took me back to the strange herbal teas Rachel had insisted I drink before bed for the past few months. She said they were calming. Said they helped with my stress. Said she read it in a wellness blog. But now, with everything else stacking up, I wasn't sure if she had ever cared about my stress, or if she was trying to suppress something inside me. I made an appointment with a private toxicologist under a fake name. I told them it was for a fictional script I was writing. They didn't ask questions. I handed over a thermos I'd hidden from the last batch of Jessica's tea and waited 3 days for results. When the lab called, the voice on the other end sounded cautious. We found compounds commonly used in low-level sedation and memory disruption. It's not illegal in trace amounts. But it's odd. Odd. Like the way Rachel had started locking her desk drawers. Or the time she came home late, saying her car had broken down, but her hair was still curled and her perfume fresh. I remembered a night, about 2 months ago, when we were intimate and something felt different. Not just physically. It was like she was somewhere else in her mind. Distant. Watching me from a ledge she didn't want to be pulled back from. That memory twisted inside me now, made worse by what I'd just learned. I wasn't just losing her. I was being managed. Conditioned. That night, I sat in the dark of our living room, watching the hallway where her light still glowed under the door. I didn't knock. I didn't barge in. I just sat there until the sun rose, wondering how long she'd been preparing for my silence. And what would happen if I broke it? I stayed out late again that night, parked in the shadows of a vacant lot near the lake where Rachel and I used to walk before dinner. The breeze was sharp and the air tasted metallic, like a storm was hiding in the distance. I needed space, but more than that, I needed clarity. Something was deeply wrong, and I didn't believe it was just an affair anymore. It felt layered, like I'd walked into a story mid-chapter and couldn't find the beginning. I started combing through every photo, receipt, and text I could find. I went through old journals, scanned her emails, even found her old burner phone, hidden inside the lining of a purse she hadn't used in over a year. It was there I found the first real crack in the story. A message from a contact named Swan. No real name. No location. Just vague messages, he won't suspect. Phase 2 is ready. And the last one, dated the night before I found the photo, make sure he drinks it. That line nearly made me drop the phone. It took me back to the strange herbal teas Jessica had insisted I drink before bed for the past few months. She said they were calming. Said they helped with my stress. Said she read it in a wellness blog. But now, with everything else stacking up, I wasn't sure if she had ever cared about my stress, or if she was trying to suppress something inside me. I made an appointment with a private toxicologist under a fake name. I told them it was for a fictional script I was writing. They didn't ask questions. I handed over a thermos I'd hidden from the last batch of Rachel's tea and waited 3 days for results. When the lab called, the voice on the other end sounded cautious. We found compounds commonly used in low-level sedation and memory disruption. It's not illegal in trace amounts. But it's odd. Odd. Like the way Rachel had started locking her desk drawers. Or the time she came home late, saying her car had broken down, but her hair was still curled and her perfume fresh. I remembered a night, about 2 months ago, when we were intimate and something felt different. Not just physically. It was like she was somewhere else in her mind. Distant. Watching me from a ledge she didn't want to be pulled back from. That memory twisted inside me now, made worse by what I'd just learned. I wasn't just losing her. I was being managed. Conditioned. That night, I sat in the dark of our living room, watching the hallway where her light still glowed under the door. I didn't knock. I didn't barge in. I just sat there until the sun rose, wondering how long she'd been preparing for my silence. And what would happen if I broke it? By morning, I had a plan, half-baked, impulsive, but it was something. I left the house before Rachel woke up and drove aimlessly until I found myself in front of a bookstore that had just opened for the day. I wasn't looking for books. I was looking for space. For an excuse to not be home. My phone buzzed a dozen times with her messages. Where are you? Are you okay? Please come home. I didn't answer. Later, I returned, acting as though nothing had changed. Rachel greeted me at the door, wearing a soft pink sweater I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago. She smiled like always, kissed my cheek, and handed me a cup of tea. I didn't drink it. Instead, I placed it carefully on the counter and watched her as she turned to fix dinner. Her hands were steady. Her voice calm. But something in her posture betrayed tension, just enough for me to notice. That night, while she slept, I quietly took the old photo album from our closet and sat at the kitchen table. Page by page, I looked through years of birthdays, vacations, and anniversaries. And then I noticed something odd, a picture missing. The slot where our 5th anniversary photo should have been was empty. Torn cleanly. The next morning, I told her I was going out for groceries. Instead, I drove to her sister's house, someone she hadn't spoken to in months. What I learned there unraveled me. Rachel hadn't just been unfaithful. She had been orchestrating something. Her sister hesitated, then handed me a folder of documents Rachel had left there by mistake. Legal papers. Real estate plans. A signed application for a property under a different name, hers, but with her maiden name. The address was in another state. It wasn't just infidelity. It was escape. A full reset. I went home in silence. I walked into the bedroom and stared at her sleeping form. For the first time, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt erased. She hadn't just cheated. She'd rewritten me out of her life. And I needed to know why. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to understand the full scope of what she'd done, and what she still might be hiding. That night, while Rachel slept in the next room, I sat quietly in our garage, staring at the boxes we never unpacked after the last move. One of them was labeled winter clothes, but when I opened it, I found something else entirely. Inside were bundles of old receipts, a burner phone charger, and a leather-bound notebook with no name. Its pages were filled with dates, times, strange symbols, and phrases in a language I didn't recognize. But what unsettled me most were the entries written in English, short, disconnected lines. Light one candle. He won't remember. Full moon, mirror, north-facing window. Bury the object under something sacred. It read like a ritual journal. Not a wellness tracker or a diary. Something older. Darker. It occurred to me that maybe the tea, the memory lapses, the missing photographs, maybe they weren't part of a psychological game. Maybe Rachel believed in something real. Or worse, maybe it was working. I started searching online for the symbols. It led me to obscure forums about folk magic, spiritual manipulation, and cleansing rituals. Some of what I found was laughable, harmless traditions and stories. But others were disturbingly specific. They matched Rachel's notes almost exactly. And then, a post stood out, a warning about binding rituals. How they're sometimes used not for protection, but for control. The herbs, the chants, the secrecy. It wasn't just about pushing someone away. It was about changing how they see the world. I thought about how disconnected I'd felt lately. The blank moments. The sudden fatigue. The dreams I couldn't remember but woke from in a cold sweat. Had I really lost time, or had it been taken from me? I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the notebook, the receipts, and the burner phone. I read every word she'd written, trying to see my life from her eyes. There were pages where she spoke of fear, fear that I would leave, fear that I'd stop loving her, fear that I'd discover something. But what exactly, she never said. The next morning, I made breakfast. Bacon, eggs, coffee. She acted like nothing was wrong, laughing as if yesterday hadn't existed. I smiled, played along. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just a man trying to catch his wife in a lie anymore. I was a man caught inside a story I hadn't written. And if I didn't take back the pen soon, I'd disappear from my own life. The days that followed blurred into each other like smoke over glass. I functioned on autopilot, work, chores, small talk, while the weight of everything I knew quietly simmered beneath the surface. I watched Rachel closer than ever, noting every glance, every excuse, every time she touched her phone and thought I wasn't looking. There was no more affection in her gestures. Only the muscle memory of a relationship gone hollow. But I wasn't ready to accuse her. Not until I had proof of what she had truly done. Instead, I started leaving subtle traps, resetting the tea bags, checking the trash each morning, placing small items in odd positions to see if they moved. And they did. Almost every night, something shifted, a cabinet slightly ajar, a scent I couldn't place in the air, a faint burn mark on the stovetop that hadn't been there the day before. I recorded everything. I backed up files from the burner phone I found. Photos. Messages. One in particular made my stomach twist, a message from a saved number, labeled only A. Do it again before the moon turns. He's slipping. I didn't know who A was. But I knew they weren't a stranger. Not to her. One night, I faked exhaustion and went to bed early. I lay silently under the covers, waiting, breathing slow and shallow. Around midnight, I heard her footsteps. She moved lightly, like she didn't want to wake me. Then the kitchen door creaked open. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. Rachel stood at the stove, whispering to herself as she stirred something in a small copper pot. The smell was earthy, mint, cloves, something bitter underneath. I watched her lift a spoon to her lips, taste, then whisper a word I couldn't catch. I stepped back before she turned, heart pounding. I wasn't just witnessing her secrets, I was finally inside them. The next morning, I confronted her. Not with anger. With silence. I placed the notebook on the table. The burner phone. The message from A. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with a calmness that terrified me more than rage ever could. I was trying to save us, she said. You were drifting. I couldn't lose you. She spoke of love like it was a wound she'd been dressing with borrowed rituals and desperate measures. She truly believed that what she was doing was keeping our family together. But the truth was, it had driven us apart. I left that night. Not with bags or drama. Just keys and clarity. Some stories don't end with betrayal. They end with recognition. The moment you realize you were never crazy. The moment you stop chasing ghosts and start walking away from the people who summoned them. This is that moment. And I'm finally free.